Hello everyone. I am Ace Yunjin from Yunjin's F1 Story. In this video, I am going to explain the current F1 tire regulations that most people feel confused. It's obviously one of the most confusing and curious things about F1 regulations, not least for newbies in the sports. It is also true that it is a bit complicated. You can see on TV them busily changing tires of different colors during pit stops, but it's hard to know exactly what rules make tires distributed and used to teams and drivers during race event week. In this video, I will explain in detail the current tire regulations in F1. The F1 tire regulations can be found in the Article 24 of 2020 F1 Sporting Regulations. The first paragraph says, the single tire manufacturer appointed by the FIA must undertake to provide. This seems obvious, but in the early days of F1, there were times when 5 manufacturers supplied tires together. Until recently, 2006, 2 tire manufacturers supplied tires. Since 2007 it has changed to a single manufacturer supply system. And since 2011 Pirelli of Italy has been supplying tires exclusively. Tires in track motorsports are largely divided into 2 types. Tires used in dry conditions and tires used in wet conditions. So is F1. At every GP event, the tire supplier must designate a suitable dry tire for the circuit and notify all teams at least 2 weeks before the start of the event. At this time, mandatory tire types up to 4 main races and 1 Q3 only tire must also be specified. With almost no exception, the Q3 only tire is the highest grip of the 3 types of dry tires. Since Pirelli became the exclusive F1 tire supplier, it had continuously expanded covering for grip of slicks, reaching 7 in 2018. According to the regulations, tires must be easily distinguished by appearance, so they are classified by color. As there are too many types of tires and it became hard to distinguish. Since 2019, they simplified them to 5 types from C1 to C5. C1 is the hardest, longest-lasting tire with the lowest grip, C5 is the softest and most easily worn, but the highest grip tire. And the color is simplified to white hard, yellow medium, and red soft. However, even if the colors look the same, each compound can vary from event to event. Like this. And the specific combinations of tires that being used in the 8 GPs are already announced. Each team's drivers receive 13 sets of dry tires, 7 sets of wet weather tires tally 20 sets. Until 2019, drivers were able to select and combine 13 dry tire sets from the 3 designated types. Depending on the strategy of each team and driver, different tire selection and strategies were possible. This year, considering the shortening of the season, it had been agreed that all drivers will be equally supplied with 8 sets of soft, 3 sets of medium, and 2 sets of hard. Unlike various dry tires, there are only 2 types of wet tires: intermediate and wet tires. Drivers are given 4 sets of intermediate and 3 sets of wet tires. If FP1 or FP2 are wet condition, only drivers used intermediate tires can receive 1 more set of intermediate. In this case, the used set of intermediate must be electronically returned before the qualifying starts. If neither P1 nor P2 are declared wet, but the likelihood of P3 being declared wet is deemed by the FIA to be high, 1 additional set of intermediate tires will be made available to all drivers. Under such circumstances, 1 set of intermediate tires must be electronically returned before the start of the qualifying practice session. Other than these cases, drivers can't get any more wet weather tires. So, if practice, qualifying, and main race are predicted as wet weather, drivers should save the given wet weather tires just in case. If the weather forecast is expected to rain throughout the event, cars often stay in the garage most of the practice session to save their wet weather tires. And that's what happened at Hungarian GP FP2 this year. The Q3 only tire must be returned before 3.5 hours after the qualifying session is over, whether made it to Q3 or not. Except for 1 set of Q3 only tire and 2 sets of mandatory main race tires. There are 10 sets of dry tires left. Prior to FP1, all drivers must specify 1 FP1 40 tire to be used for the first 40 minutes of FP1, and then return it after 40 minutes of use. This FP1 40 tire regulation has the effect of forcing cars to come out on the track in the early part of FP1, having to return it after 40 minutes of FP1 anyway. It's better to use it. The reason for this rule was adopted is that everyone is reluctant to come out at early FP1. During early stage of FP1, the first schedule of the race event, there are a lot of dirt and dust on the track. And there is almost no rubber, so the lap time is quite slow and the risk of accidents is also higher. With this simple track condition difference, there typically is around a second difference in lap time from Sunday's race. As a matter of fact, the test doesn't mean much. But if no one goes out on the track, these track condition problems won't be eased at all. Also, of course, they must consider broadcasting and fans who have come to watch this session. That's why they are forced to come out on track with the FP140 tire. After 40 minutes, all cars back to the garage, replace the tires, and then return an additional set of dry tires within 2 hours of the end of FP1 session. Additionally, 2 sets of dry tires are returned within 2 hours after the completion of each FP2 and FP3 sessions. If both FP1 and FP2 are either declared wet or cancelled, one of these sets may be retained by each driver but must be electronically returned no later than 2 hours after the end of FP3. Now, at the time just before the main race, all cars have 6 sets, including the sets of mandatory main race tires, unless there were any problems such as tire puncture. Among them, there are tires used in Q1 and Q2, so there must be fewer brand new tires than 6. In the main race, except for pit lane start, cars entered in Q3 must start the race with the tire marked best lap time in Q2. This regulation is designed to give cars in front of the grid a little bit of handicap, to make races tighter and more interesting. However, under the recent trend that the differences in performance between teams are huge, it seems almost meaningless and had discussed getting rid of it, but it still remains anyway. Unless intermediate or wet weather tires are used during the main race, each driver must use at least 2 different dry tires during the race, at least one of which must be a mandatory main race tire. Of course, there are no limitations on number of tire changes. Once in 2005, they were forced to use only 1 tire throughout the main race. After experiencing a skid in which only 6 cars participated in the main race, due to tire bursting problem at a certain corner of the American GP, the following year, tire replacement was allowed again and maintained from then on. So far, we have looked at the current F1 tire regulations. Now, the F1 tire regulations are not so complicated anymore, are they? Please click like and subscribe buttons. Yoonjin's F1 story will come back with a new F1 story. Thank you for watching.